I'm Cynthia EDUL. I'm from Argentina. I live in Buenos Aires. I was born and raised in Buenos Aires. And I am a playwright and a fiction writer. And also I work as a lecturer in the university and direct a residency of Latin American and Spanish playwrights in Buenos Aires. Regarding writing, I write theater and novels, like fiction novels. I think there are a lot of good things to be a writer in Argentina. First, the tradition of literature in Argentina and theater also, you know. It's like a kind of a big important country in culture, and it's a really, for me, important country in the tradition of literature. And that tradition is very interesting because it's not a tradition that is stiff, but on the opposite, you know. We had like a kind of system Borges created that is more like, okay, to break the boundaries of the canon literature, you know, so, or rebuild it, and you know, and I think from that moment, for a writer, it's like there's a big field, you know, to explore, you know, and I think it's that freedom. It's something that you could really enjoy or improve for your writing. You know, it's like how to position yourself in that, how to read, and also the possibility to have a so productive literature. You know, where there's an enormous market, but the market, not the market of the bestsellers, the market of the real of the literature that we care about. So there's an interest in for literature too. So I think in those sense, to be a writer, it's really interesting because you have a lot of things to, I don't know, to fool yourself with, you know, to eat, to take from that. The worst thing, it's of course like I don't know. It's I don't think if it's a worst thing because there's no censorship. There's no, you know. It's like so. I don't know, there's more like the kind of, and sometimes this kind of feels tends to be a little endogamic, you know? And sometimes the isolation of the country, like it's really in the south, and sometimes too, you know, it's a peripheral country already, so, you know, that dialogue that sometimes is fluid with the other, you know, centers of cultural production, sometimes it's not, and when it's not, it tends to be the feel a little endogamic, and I think that could be like a negative feature, but I don't think it's. I think it's if you have a kind of to see the big picture, you're going to have for me, a very positive one. You know. The hybrid culture we have, you know. It's like that kind of, it's a country that was built up for immigrants in a way, in a big tension with the elites, intellectual and power elites. There's it's a country that it's always trying to make a cultural bridge with this, with Europe, but at the same time it's a Latin American country. So that sometimes is a fluid thing, sometimes it's tension, sometimes it's fights, you know. It's strong. It's never a stop, you know. It's like, and I think that at the end, I don't know if I can live without it. You know, it's like and I think that sometimes it's a feature that I don't like of my country, but at the same time it's what I love of it. You know, it's like a kind of that passion, and you know, in the everyday, you know, life. What drive me writing was more like I started my career as an actress when I was really young, like 14 years old. So that's my relationship with theater. You know, like I started I was an actress, and at the same time, when I was 18, I started a BA in literature in the University of Buenos Aires, and everything changed in that moment. You know, when I started to study literature, I started to abandon acting, but at the same time, I started to produce theater in the like a playwright, and from playwright I moved to novel, and I go back, and you know, I work in both fields. I think what drives me writing is a relationship with experience, you know, that try to rebuild in writing the experience of the the relationship with, I say it sometimes, the real, you know, that to try to work with that. That's what drives me writing for the first time was a kind of autobiographical sequence that I develop in different places and in a novel, rebuilding, you know, that it's not it's fiction in a way, but it's really rebuilt from some experience of my biography and more the biography of my family and my father. So that was the first, you know, door I opened, you know. And then, of course, I discovered the relationship that language has with experience and all that issue literature and theater works with. So, but I think that's the core of the first core I discovered, and was where from writing started to come. I read a lot, basically, and also as I teach, it's like, for me, reading is like a kind of everyday work. So I try to read everything I can. I read a lot of Latin American and Argentinian literature because it's the field where I work, but at the same time I try to read like all the, I don't know, contemporary literature. I am really into contemporary, or try to be really into contemporary literature. I read a lot also philosophy and essays, and sometimes academical works too, in order to know the discussion, you know, where is the discussion going in the moment. So I work, and also for me it's with theater, for example, I go to more than 3 times a week to the theater, or 4 times sometimes. So it's like a kind of also another dialogue with a kind of another kind of writing, you know, because it's, of course it's not the same, but it's so I have it's an like important habit reading. I read almost more novels and short, and then short stories, but I am like a kind of reader of novels a lot, you know. I think about some writers, I don't know if they are so translated. For me, one is Fogwill, who is for me one of the most important Argentinian writers. He died some years ago. He has a intense production, and also he was a kind of those writers that can discover new writers, you know. And for me, Fogwill is a very important writer in my career also. One of his novels called The Sensitive Experience, La Experiencia Sensible. It was the novel that opened my first play. Also, he has a novel about the Falklands, you know, Los Pichiciegos, and it's a kind of the reverse of the, you know, of the story of the war in a really violent and in a really brilliant, you know, way. And I think for me, he is the one of that we have to communicate more. The state has to support arts, and the state has to support literature, and we have examples of that. We can see the countries that invest a lot in culture, like Germany and France, and what happened after with those cultures, you know. It's like how they could develop, you know. For example, in theater is something really important what in Germany and France happened, you know, and when the state supports the arts. So I think, yes, we have examples that we can see as a fact, which was the result. So I think, yes, I think in literature is that we should think about it. How, you know, for example, with kind of residencies are very important, you know, because it's to give to the writer a space, you know, to work. You know, so they can have the time, because sometimes the problem for writers is that they have to work so much that the time for writing is not so. Prizes are important too. Of course, everything has the negative side of everything, but I prefer to see it as the positive side, and I prefer to think that to help publishing, for example, publishing for emerging writers. Sometimes for emerging writers, it's not so easy to be published, you know. So there are, for example, in Argentina, there used to be some prizes for new writers, so they can give you the money, so you know, so you can or develop or more your writing, or you know, to find, you know, those kind of how to improve the field. We have to see where are the lacks, you know, and try to see there. But I think, yes, I'm totally sure states has to support literature. It's a fantastic country. Also, I'm a lover of American literature. You know, Argentina is a kind of lover of American literature for us. Like the writers of the first part of the century, 20th century, was like Faulkner or Hemingway, Fitzgerald, or a lot of them. You know, it's like. But I am really like in literature. I was always like a reader of American literature. So, and at the same time, I think this system of universities is fantastic for me. I can't believe it. The kind of, you know, space research, like the tools for your research they give you, you know, I think that's something really special that define American, and so I was really happy when I saw Iowa University and the kind of things we can do. And also Iowa is a literature city where you go to the cafes and there are people writing, and then there's readings every day. And there, you know, it's like a kind of, it's a writer's city. And I was so fascinated with that I'm enjoying every day, you know, I celebrate it. And I think when I'm going to be in Buenos Aires, I will cry when I remember a lot of things of here.